والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. My dear brothers and sisters, I welcome all of you with Islamic greeting. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May the peace, mercy, and blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of Almighty God, be on all of you. Before we get started, inshallah, today's topic is open question and answer session. We have Dr. Imad here with us. And before we get started, I just have to explain what an important part of MSA Dr. Imad truly is. Throughout the years, he has been a major part of our MSA. He's our faculty advisor and he's our resident scholar. Alhamdulillah, we're very fortunate to have him. Other MSAs usually very jealous of the fact that he's so close by and that we have the opportunity to ask him questions, we have the opportunity to engage with him, talk with him, participate in events with him. We're very lucky to have him so close by, and we really need to understand how fortunate we are. So inshallah, we can take advantage of that. And since he has been such a major part of MSA throughout the years, we have a presentation, a small thing to give to him, alhamdulillah. Not a lot of people realize this, but in addition to just being a major part of MSA, Dr. Imad is also, I consider him to be a personal mentor. He has helped me throughout a lot of different problems, a lot of different questions that I've had. Normally people come and they ask me questions, and then when I need questions, I go to Dr. Imad. So alhamdulillah, he has been there for us, and hopefully inshallah, through being good to him, he will continue to be there for us inshallah. So Dr. Imad, jazakallahu khair for all of your years of dedication to MSA. I think you're probably the only person who's been here longer than I have. So alhamdulillah, we really appreciate everything, and we would like to present you with this. And if you want to open it and read it to everybody inshallah.
So you can, to see if you can read Arabic and English letters.
Well, you have the most beautiful hair in the whole world.
Is that my cup?
متع روحك بكاسة شاي. This is it sounds like Palestinian.
It is.
She wrote it.
Like enjoy or let your spirit enjoy a cup of tea.
For those of you guys who don't know, Dr. Imad, he grows and he makes and he blends his own tea. And doesn't need sugar, doesn't need any lemon or honey or anything like that. MashaAllah, it tastes great. And actually, a quick story is we went to see the first, what is it, Harry Potter 7, Part 1 or whatever?
Part 1.
Stories, you know.
And Dr. Imad came with us and he brought some of his very famous tea, mashallah. And it's better than any popcorn and nachos you could have had in the theater. We had tea, alhamdulillah. So that's just a quick thing. But now back on the students, alhamdulillah, you guys take this opportunity. This is an open question and answer session. So inshallah, take this opportunity to ask Dr. Imad the questions. And the Prophet ﷺ said, I believe,
yeah, well, it's not a hadith, but just no hayat in learning about the religion. There's no hayat. I think if there's any question that may sound embarrassing, you can write it down and pass it on.
Inshallah. So actually, we will get a piece of paper. If you guys want, just raise your hand. We'll pass the paper around, inshallah. You can write down your question. But just don't forget that this is a learning experience, inshallah. So don't be shy. If you have a question that you really want to ask, write it down, inshallah, because someone else might have the same question too. Okay? So without any further ado, let's get this started, inshallah.
Shoot. That's my hand. Oh, yeah. What?
Say,
Who? Go, please. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was wondering how strong.
Listen, yes, brothers, please listen.
I was wondering how strong this hadith is. It's by Aisha. And Aisha قالت كان النبي لا يتوضأ بعد الغسل. Aisha said the Prophet did not perform ablution after taking a bath.
Jazakum Allah khair. Wallah, this specific hadith, I'm not really sure about its authenticity, but the meaning is absolutely correct. Which means that the ghusl actually includes the wudu. So if a person actually does a ghusl, everybody knows what a ghusl means? The ghusl is basically like a shower with the intention. That's really what so the ghusl has some arkan, some requirements, and these are only two. It's basically the intention. You have to have it with the intention of doing ghusl. And the second thing is that water has to cover the whole body. Unless, of course, if the sister, let's say she has a long braid or something, it doesn't have to cover the hair, but actually the roots of the hair. Now, the ghusl normally includes the wudu. So if a person does a ghusl, he does not have to make wudu. On the other hand, the shower does not. Sometimes a brother just walks into the shower without the intention, and he will think that, well, I just had a shower and I have to make wudu. Actually, that will be true only if you have the intention. So if the person actually does the ghusl, that would include the wudu. However, there are sunan of the ghusl. Certain things that are recommended for the ghusl. One of them is to do the wudu in the beginning. But if the person does not just basically have the intention and walks into the shower, and the shower covers the whole body, then you don't need to have wudu. Okay?
But what if you forget wudu at the end by accident?
When you what?
What if you get wudu all the way at the end by accident?
What do you mean? Like what?
Like during wudu, what if you forget to like
Make wudu?
It's not a
See, it is not required. Again, it's one of the sunan of the wudu. One of the sunan of the ghusl is to make wudu in the beginning. It's one of the sunan, means it is recommended but not required. So if the person doesn't do it, that's fine. You don't have to do it at all. Okay? So the way it's done is normally in the beginning, not at the end. Because sometimes we do it out of almost like compulsion. You know, that we have to have wudu at the end of the ghusl. No, you don't have to. Just the ghusl by itself is sufficient. You had a question.
When you do wuzu in the shower, do you have to say Bismillah as well? Like the dua before you?
You can, again, this is not something that is required. It's recommended. You can say it if you want, but you don't have to. Okay?
And I wasn't sure on another thing. When I went to wuzu and I have to put pani in my hair, like how much water do you have to put exactly?
Well, how much the Prophet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Wamsahu bi ru'usikum." You wipe with your head. Now here there are two different opinions. Some says bi ru'usikum may indicate that a little bit, or some of says the whole thing. That's why some opinion says that basically if you do this, you know, or if you just do a little bit, that would still be sufficient. Yeah, and for example, I think this becomes important, especially if the sister is wearing hijab, for example, and she wants to make wudu in the bathroom, and she does, like in a public bathroom, and she doesn't want to take her hijab off. She can just basically wet her hand, you know, and then underneath like that, that would be sufficient, inshallah. Okay.
Also some filler questions, I guess we're waiting. The question is, if the imam leaves a gap to recite Surah Al-Fatiha, is it compulsory for everyone to recite it?
No, normally it depends on the madhab. Normally in the Shafi'i madhab you have to read it. But if you follow the Hanafi normally the Ahnaf do not read the Fatiha after the imam. Now the rule here, let's say for example, let me go back one step to make sure everybody's on the same page. Reading Surah Al-Fatiha is required. Is one of the requirements actually of the rak'ah, for the rak'ah to count. And the Prophet says that there's no salat liman lam yaqra' bi Fatihat al-kitab. There's no salat for the one who does not read the Fatiha, unless you are praying behind an imam. Then his recitation will be yours. Now, with the Hanafi madhab, normally the imam reads al-Fatiha, and immediately after he reads the next surah. With the Shafi'i madhab, he gives you some time. If you're following the Shafi'i madhab, normally you would have to read after the imam finishes. But let's say, for example, you are a Shafi'i and the imam did not give you time, that you do not read. That's why you do not read while the imam is reciting. You cannot say, well, even if he's reading a surah that I know already by heart, I know the surah, I'll recite with the imam. No, you do not. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِذَا قُرِئَ الْقُرْآنِ فَاسْتَمِعُوا لَهُ وَأَنصِتُوا. When the Quran is recited, you listen to it. And once a person was reading with the Prophet ﷺ at the same time, and the Prophet told them at the end, after he finished, he says, مَالِ أُنَزَعَ الْقُرْآنِ, that who's fighting over the Quran with me? That's why if the Imam gives you time, you recite it. If he does not, then you do not recite it. So the recitation of the Imam will be your recitation as well.
Okay, there's a part 2 to the question. So what if you can't finish, or what if you can't complete Surah Al-Fatiha within
That's
the
what
gap?
I'm saying. Let's say, for example, the Imam is about to go to ruku', right? Is about to go to ruku'. So you don't have time to read anything. Then you go to ruku', you do not recite Al-Fatiha. You do not say it, Alhamdulillah, Ameen, and you go down. No, you do not recite it. That's why the recitation of the Imam is your recitation. And the hadith that says that there's no salat for the one who does not read Al-Fatiha, this is when you're praying by yourself, not when you're praying behind an Imam.
What if you started the Surah Al-Fatiha? Like he gave you the gap and you
You
started?
cut, you finish, you cut, whatever he goes. That's why, let's say, for example, I started reading, but I didn't have enough time to finish it, and he's already in ruku'. You don't continue it. You stop whatever it is. You follow the Imam. The Prophet says, إِنَّمَا جُعِلَ الْإِمَامُ لِيُؤْتَمَّ بِهِ. The Imam is made for him to be followed. So that's why you do not finish it. You cut it, wherever you reach, and you go you go to the ruku'. Yeah, sometimes you find brothers, that the Imam is already up and they're still actually down in sujood. Yeah, what are you doing down there? The Imam is almost finishing. Yeah, sometimes people would like to recite certain dua and certain things at length, And anyway, the imam doesn't give them the time to do that, then you follow the imam. You do not do your own thing. You just follow the imam, and then as soon as he does something. That's what the Prophet says. إنما جعل الإمام ليؤتم به.
What's to say on qada prayer? Because I've been missing Fajr quite frequently, and I pray qada.
Okay, the Prophet ﷺ, he says, anyone who forgets or sleeps, out of a prayer, or sleep, of a prayer, then he should do it as soon as he can. So as soon as you wake up, you do not say, well, I missed it anyway, so I'll do it with dhuhr. No, you have to do it as soon as you wake up, you make wudu, and then you pray it. However, the Prophet mentioned that not as a rule that the person always, the Prophet says you do it whenever you want, whenever you wake up. No, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ كَانَتْ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ كِتَابًا مَوْقُوتًا, that the salat was at prescribed times. So that's why the person has to try his best to wake up for Fajr. And that includes going to bed early. A person says, well, I could never wake up for Fajr. What time do you go to sleep? 2, 3. Well, what do you expect? 2 or 3, That's why the person has to prepare for waking up for Fajr, and after that he has the excuse. Or setting up the alarm or doing something. But obviously if I go to bed at 4 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning, it's going to be tough to wake up for Fajr. Or I may wake up and go back, I'll be groggy for the whole day, I just sleep the whole day.
Can you pray in congregation if you miss a salah?
Yes, because there is a hadith actually by Nu'man ibn Bashir where the Prophet ﷺ, there was an instance where they actually missed Salat al-Fajr, and the Prophet ﷺ led them in Salat al-Fajr qada, after actually it was passed. This was
Wait, this was before Dhuhr came in, right?
Yes, before Dhuhr. Actually what happened is that they woke up when sun was still up, so the Prophet waited for a little bit until the sun was, for maybe like 10-15 minutes, until it was further up, and he led them in Salat al-Fajr qada, all of them. Actually, some may not consider it to be qada, because the hadith, he says, فَلْيُؤَدِّهَا مَتَى اسْتَطَاعَ. If you pray the prayer on time, it's called ada. If you pray it later, it is called qada. And the hadith says, مَنْ نَامَ عَنْ صَلَاةٍ أَوْ نَسِيهَا, that anyone who sleeps over or forgets it, فَلْيُؤَدِّهَا. He did not say فَلْيَقْضِهَا. Which means that the person has a legitimate excuse, and he prays the prayer that he missed, it will be prayed as if it was on time. But again, there's a legitimate excuse in there.
So the Prophet ﷺ had waited to pray?
Had waited for the sun to be a little up, and he normally indicated in other hadith to wait maybe for about 20 minutes or so for the sun to be a little above, and then to pray.
Had he already prayed Fajr or no?
He had not. He had missed praying Fajr.
Okay.
Yeah, he had missed praying Fajr, and then alayhi salatu wasalam, he led them in the prayer. Yes.
So one time we were traveling, and Maghrib time was coming in,
Okay.
and we still had to pray Dhuhr and Asr.
No, here you have the permission to pray even now. The Prophet says there's no prayer after Salat al-Asr, and there's a prayer actually, let's say for example, a time of karaha at the end. MashaAllah already. Alhamdulillah. So if the person is, let's say for example, has not prayed Salat al-Asr, he has all the way up till Maghrib. But it is recommended to do it as early as he can. As early as he can. Okay? Okay. Do you have to cover your feet while you pray? I guess this is for the sisters. Obviously. There are two opinions, actually. One opinion that says that the feet have to be covered. One of them says that it does not, like Ibn Hazm has indicated. So anyway, there are two opinions about that. What is the punishment for not wearing the hijab? Wallah, the hijab, of course, is a fard. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it fard. Now this, by the way, it doesn't mean that if the sister doesn't wear hijab, she's a bad sister or whatnot. But of course, it's a shortcoming that, all of us have different shortcomings. You may see that sometimes you do not. So the hijab is actually is required, is a fard. And of course, a person who forsakes a fard, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will hold them accountable for that. But we don't want to be judging, the others if the sister doesn't wear hijab or the brother doesn't do this or that. This is really what defines them. No, I think each one of us is more than our own shortcomings, but it is required. So why do some people blow air around and to themselves after the dua? Is it something we should do? Is it okay to make dua with gum in your mouth?
Gum.
With a gum in your mouth.
What was the question?
Is it okay to make dua while chewing gum, I guess, or something? Another one, why is it that some people blow air around themselves or something? Now there is a hadith. There is a hadith actually where reading, and Fatima alayhi salam used to do that, where she would read basically "Qul huwallahu ahad" before going to sleep. "Qul a'udhu birabbil falaq, qul a'udhu birabbin nas" 3 times. She would blow and then she would wipe over that. But this is the only instance that we know what it is done. But normally after the dua, you can just read the dua and then stop in there. Now there is a weak hadith that I think it was Ibn Umar or Umar, I don't exactly remember correctly, where after reading the dua he would wipe over the face. And this is a weak hadith. Now if a person does that, and a lot of time we do it out of habit, and there's nothing wrong with that because in a way there is a hadith. So a person cannot reject that. But it's a weak hadith. That's why it would be better if the person just reads the dua and then stops in there. But sometimes people exaggerate the blowing and the kissing the hand and doing certain things and whatnot. Yeah, this is a little exaggerated. Like I said, the only instance that we know of is Fatima when reading actually Al-Ikhlas and Al-Ma'udhatayn, or the weak hadith by Umar or Ibn Umar. Is it okay to make dua with gum in your mouth? Well, I would say it is good to make dua anywhere you are and wherever you are. Yeah, so long as it is coming out of your heart. But if the person wants to focus more, maybe better not to eat or drink, or chew. But even if a person, let's say, for example, sometimes may go through a moment of sincerity and he feels that I want to make dua from my heart and there's something in his mouth, he doesn't have to spit it or anything else. It is good at any time. So the dua is good to be done at any time. And by the way, even if the person is in a state of sin, the person is already actually in a state of sinning, to say, Ya Allah, forgive me, this is still good. It is still good to make dua at that time, rather than not making dua at all. Yes?
Relating to the dua, you know how in the masjid, when people make dua after Jum'ah, they all go on their knees and face the Qibla. Is that?
Wallahi, see, facing the Qibla actually is one of the sunan of the dua. There is actually a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ made a dua to, I think it was the brother of Abu Ubaidah Amr ibn al-Jarrah. No, his name is Abu Amr al-Ash'ari. He died and the Prophet ﷺ made wudu and he faced the Qibla while making dua. That's why it's a sunnah to make, it's recommended to face the Qibla while making dua, but it doesn't have to be done. It can be done in any way, wherever you are. But if you have the option, that would be good. The best dua, of course, is the dua that's coming out of the heart, in any language. It doesn't have to be done in Fusha Arabic or Palestinian Arabic or any other language. So long as it is coming out of the heart, it is a great dua. Any other question? Yes? Oh, more? MashaAllah. They keep coming. What are the minimum requirements for a nikah, for marriage? Well, I think, I think for the they will be, of course, the nikah. I don't know what the question is referring to, but as far as the general requirements, the person, of course, has to have the means, because the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man istata'a minkum al-ba'ata falyatazawwaj." Anyone who can afford it should get married. That's why the person has the means, and he feels that he's responsible enough, mature enough to get married, then he should do it. Now, in Islam, of course, so long it can be done so long as the person is an adult. But of course, here legally, you have to be 18 and older. And this is something that has to be observed. So a person cannot say, well, Islamically, it is not required. Yes, it is not required, but we are required to respect and to honor the laws of the land, so long as they do not contradict, of course, the Islamic teachings. And here, this is something that has to be observed. As far as the actual contract is concerned, of course, the sister would need the consent of her wali, of her guardian, which will be a father or relative or whatnot. Yeah, there's a lot to be said about that. And of course, there has to be some basically offer and acceptance. An offer and acceptance, and you have to have witnesses and a mahar. And there has to be a documentation in addition to that. That's why I do not recommend, I would strongly disrecommend for any of you to do his or her nikah alone, separately, in the masjid by yourself, without anybody knowing about it. The way to do it is you will go to the state, to the city, and you will apply. You will apply for a marriage certificate, and they will give it to you with the part that indicates the religious leader who officiates the marriage. You will leave that blank, and that will have to be filled by the imam. This way it will be documented in the masjid or by the imam as well as legally. Because the Islamic or the marriage is not just a religious contract. Islam is not just a religious contract. Islam is also a legal contract, a contract that ensures the legal rights of both parties. That's why, by the way, some scholars, they even allow a non-Muslim to officiate a marriage of a Muslim. Because they said it is not a religious contract, it's a legal contract that Islam has put some guidelines for. So I would recommend for the marriage to be recorded and to be registered in the city, as well as be done by the imam, and not just by the imam. Because if you just do it, basically there's no legal document that will be recognized. The legal document of a masjid is not necessarily recognized, by the system. That's why you want a contract that guarantees the rights of both. That's why it has to be recorded both in the city as well as officiated in the marriage, in the masjid. Okay? Yes? Yeah,
Yesterday, we had a debate about marriage contract, and some of the sisters are implying that they want to put a clause in the contract that the man should not marry another woman.
Wallahi, subhanAllah, there has been differences in opinion here, by the way, as far as, again, about respecting the laws of the land. I would say a person should not marry more than one wife. Because, first of all, again, marrying more than one wife is not a requirement nor a sunnah. So if you do not marry a second wife, it's not that you're forsaking a fard or a sunnah. No, actually, it's just one. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that basically you have to be fair. So if a man marries more than one wife, he has to be fair to all of them. So let's say, for example, if you marry one woman, and she's recognized, her rights are recognized legally. But if you marry the second one, it has to be secret, of course, because her rights will not be recognized. Now, I won't be fair to both of them by doing that. Why? Because one of them is recognized legally, the other one is not. So in a way, her rights can be lost as such. That's why I will not recommend, if somebody comes to me, I would say absolutely don't do it. I would say do not do it. Not because it's haram. No, Allah made it halal. I cannot say that it's haram. No, I would say do not do it. Because first, we are required to respect the laws of the area of the land that we're living in, so long as it does not contradict a requirement, an Islamic requirement. The second thing is that by marrying one secretly, you will not be actually just to both of them. You will not be fair to them.
I agree with that, but I'm just saying is when it comes to the marriage contract specifically.
Well, like I said, I think here, of course, it's a given. But again, let's say, for example, in another land, another place, another time. Can they include that? Wallahi, there are differences in opinion in here, by the way, but whatever is included in the contract has to be honored. So let's say, for example, it can, whatever the two agree upon, it has to be honored. Let's say, for example, they may agree that in case of a divorce, then the children the mother will have the full custody, complete custody. That has to be honored. That has to be honored. So whatever is agreed upon before the marriage in the contract, has to be honored because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَوْفُوا بِالْعُقُودِ وَأَوْفِي بِالْعَهْدِ أَنَّ الْعَهْدَ كَانَ مَسْئُولًا. That the person has to honor whatever agreement he signs.
Why did the Prophet, a lot of people ask me, why did the Prophet have so many wives?
Yes. Let me answer a few questions, I'll come back to that because it's a long one. Okay? I'll come back to that in a second. When women cannot pray, should they still pretend to pray with the people? I would say no. Yeah, this is something, subhanAllah, not to be ashamed of. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created people like that. There's nothing wrong with that. If they can pray, they can. If they cannot pray, they do not. Now, of course, people can make their guess. Maybe the sister prayed already, maybe the sister whatever. But in any case, this is nothing to be ashamed of because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created us this way. But of course, when the sister is going through this time, she can still read Quran, by the way. And she can still make tasbih. Now, what she cannot do is touch the Quran. So let's say, for example, if she's reading from a screen or from something that is open in front of her or from memory, she can read that. She can read from the Quran. And she can also make tasbih and dua and dhikr as much as she can. It would still be good to do. Is it compulsory for a brother to have his pants above his ankle during the salat? If so, why? If not, why not? Now, of course, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in the hadith about the pants being above the ankle. But here there are differences in opinions, by the way, regarding the exact meaning of that teaching. Because if you look actually at the door of Al-Bukhari, the way he listed that hadith, he says, مَنْ جَرَّ ثَوْبَهُ مِنْ خُيَلَةٍ. So anyone who extends the length of his garment out of arrogance. And of course, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq alayhi came to the Prophet, Ya Rasulullah, after the Prophet said that it should not go below the ankle. This is for the men, of course. He says, Ya Rasulullah, sometimes, I try to lift it up and it falls down. So it falls down. So does that apply to me? And the Prophet indicated that this is actually for those that do so out of arrogance. So when it is a sign of arrogance, then it will be prohibited. That's why some people will take it literally, that says that it has to be above the ankle. And this is not about the salat, by the way, about the whole, all the time. This is one opinion. The other opinion, and wallah, I see it very valid, is that this is prohibited as a sign of arrogance. Which means whatever is a sign of arrogance will be prohibited. Whether shortening, whether lengthening, whatever actually is relative to the society, will be prohibited if it represents any sign of arrogance. Okay, the wives of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ, of course, had more than 4 wives at the same time. Now, why he did, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him that permission. That's the reason. However, there is a reason, there is a wisdom behind that. The wives of the Prophet ﷺ are the mothers of the believers. They're considered the mothers of the believers, which means nobody can marry the Prophet's wives after his death, or if the Prophet divorces any of them. But this is not the case for other people. That's why the Prophet already had more than 4 wives before the verse came down indicating the limit to be 4. And the Prophet ﷺ told one of the Sahaba who had more than 4 wives to divorce, anyone who was more than 4. To divorce, basically to keep only 4 wives. But the Prophet but this man, whoever he divorces, can marry anybody else. And by the way, in the Arabian environment at that time, it was not a stigma to marry a divorced woman or a widower. As it is today sometimes. It says that, well, if she gets divorced, nobody will marry her. At the time of the Prophet, it was not a concern at all. Because actually, if you look, that the wives of most of the Sahabas, including those of the Prophet ﷺ, except Aisha, they were married to somebody before the Prophet and before the other Sahaba. That's why marrying a divorced woman or a widow was not a stigma as it is in the Islamic societies today. So if that man divorces anyone can marry her. But if the Prophet divorces anyone, then nobody can marry her. That's why the wives of the Prophet actually were the mothers of the believers. Now if you look at the reasons why the Prophet married his wives, you will find that each one of them actually has a reason. Now of course the Prophet ﷺ first married Khadija when he was 25. And she was 15 years his senior. So she was 40 when he was 25. And he stayed with her until she died when he was 50. So she was 45. She was 65 years of age, and he did not marry anyone besides her. Which means if the Prophet was after multiple marriage and women, so to speak, he would have married during his prime time. When he was young, and not when after Khadija alayhi radwanullah actually died. But each of his wives had a story. Now here the question that comes often about the age of Aisha alayhi radwanullah is that how could the Prophet marry somebody this young? Now here there is one hadith. There is one hadith actually that indicates that she was 9 years of age when the Prophet married her, and it is known that the Prophet ﷺ married her after the migration, after he migrated to Medina. Now, first of all, whatever the Prophet did, and I'll come back to the specific age of Aisha alayhi radwanullah, whatever the Prophet ﷺ did was within the norms of the society at that time. And Aisha alayhi radwanullah was engaged to somebody before the Prophet ﷺ, the son of Al-Mut'ab ibn Adi. He was engaged to Aisha alayhi radwanullah, so the Prophet ﷺ was not the first to approach her in marriage. That's one thing. And the people of Quraysh, of course, used to seek any opportunity to criticize the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, but yet none of them criticized him for marrying somebody being that young. That's one thing. Now, how old exactly was Aisha alayhi radwanullah? That's the question. Of course, the dating system, as far as putting a date, 1960, 1940, something like that, the system of dating only started at the time of Umar alayhi radwanullah, retroactive to the migration. You know the story, right? So the calendar was established at the time of Umar. Before Umar alayhi ridwan, they used to date the events by they used to date the different things that happened by the major event that happened at that time. So for example, the Prophet ﷺ was born during the year of the elephant. This thing, a certain event happened during the year of the famine. This thing happened during the year of the rebuilding of the Kaaba. That's why that introduces a lot of error in trying to understand when the different events happen. And the same thing with the month. That's why there's a disagreement, by the way, about certain events that you would think are very significant. For example, Isra and Mi'raj. We don't know exactly when it happened. There's nothing that confirms as to which month and which day actually it happened. The same thing, by the way, about the birth of the Prophet ﷺ. Most likely it seems to be on the 12th of Rabi' al-Awwal, but we don't know that for certain. There are certain narrations that says, I think 18th of Rabi' al-Awwal, and some that says even in Ramadan. So the absence of the dating system introduces a lot of error in knowing when a certain event happened. Back to the hadith that Aisha was at the age of 9. The Sahabi that narrated this hadith narrated it when he was in Baghdad. And when he was in Baghdad, actually he was really old, and some believe him to suffer some memory problems, which adds to of course, the element of error. Now, if you look at the other hadith that indicate the age of Aisha, there's one hadith in particular that indicates that all of the children of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq were born before Islam. And you can say this is an accurate way of documenting a certain event, which means the time the Prophet married Aisha, she was at least about 14 years of age. Another one that says that she was, I think, 5 years younger than Fatima. And if you put the calculation, that also puts her around maybe 16, 17 years of age. And another one that indicates how she is relative to her older sister, Asma binti Abi Bakr, alayha ridwanullah. That's why if you put all the narrations together, then Aisha seems to be much older than commonly actually is believed. Another example in here that indicates that, in the beginning of the Battle of Uhud, and many of you have read that, the Prophet ﷺ started going around the army, and if any of the young companions was there, he sent them back. Like some of the companions like Abu Sa'id al-Khudari, Ibn Abbas, Ibn Umar, they were probably like 12, 13 years, 14 years of age, and the Prophet felt they were too young to be in the battlefield. They were too young to be with him actually in the Battle of Uhud, so he sent them back. But yet we know that Aisha was in the Battle of Uhud, which means she wasn't actually that young. Otherwise, if the Prophet is sending back the men who are very physically strong, why would he keep actually a woman in there? So all the narrations, again, exactly how old Aisha was, we don't know exactly, but all the indication seems to be pointing that Aisha actually is older than commonly is believed. Aisha is actually probably seems to be more like between 14 and 18 years of age when the Prophet ﷺ married her. And now a person will say, well, 14, that's still too young. Well, by today's standard, that's too young. You know, if you look back actually here, even in the US, maybe 100 years ago, people used to marry at that age. But that's really what the age of Aisha seems to be actually around. Okay. If a divorce occurs, we're talking about marriage, now divorce. When there are children involved in the situation, who becomes responsible for them? Well, I think this is something that has to be actually in agreement with both. In agreement with both. And I think it is not one or the other, that exclusive. And I think both have to remain, part of the life of their children. I think if anybody, wallah, is really concerned about that, this is something that we have to discuss, specifically about the case. That's why certain questions cannot be answered generally. It depends on the situation. If a woman is in that time of the month, can she read the Quran from her phone? Yes, I said that some they say that, by the way, you'll find some people that will say, some imam that will say that you do not read Quran. And that's not correct. A person can still read the Quran, even if she is actually going through the period, so long as she does not touch the Quran. So if she's reading, let's say, for example, from a computer screen or from a phone, that should be okay, inshallah.
So if she holds it with something else?
What?
Is it okay for her to hold the Quran with something else? Or is that not okay?
Well, no, it's better not to touch the Quran. It's not really told. If the Quran, like say, for example, is not for her, she can flip the pages maybe with something, or she can ask somebody to turn the pages for her.
Is there a reason why?
Well, this is the Prophet, that's the point what the Prophet says. And the same thing, by the way, for the men when they are junub, the same thing, the men actually cannot touch the Quran. So this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has tested, subhanAllah, the women with. Like He tested the men with something else. That's the way we're made. Can you explain, please, Ayah 34 from Surah An-Nisa? I don't have a Mus'haf. الرجال قوامون على النساء. Okay, this is the verse. Now, the verse is الرجال قوامون على النساء. What does that mean? الرجال قوامون على النساء means basically the men are in charge of the household. But this doesn't mean that it's a dictatorship. Or it means this is a superiority. It does not mean that. You know, if you want to apply a certain verse, you have to look at the way the Prophet implemented it, alayhi salatu wasalam, because his practice is the implementation of the Quran. That's why when that says, because every institution, every organization, every group has to have a leader. You cannot, a boat, you cannot have two captains. You have to have one person in charge of that, and this job was given to the men. It doesn't mean it's a dictatorship. You know, the Prophet ﷺ used to consult with his wives and used to heed their advice. This is Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, like with Salama, like in the Hudaybiyah Treaty, and many other instances. So here, this does not indicate a superiority. It just indicates a division of labor, so to speak, or division of obligations. You know, so in certain ways, in certain instances, men were favored over women, and in others, women were favored over men. Not favored in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but favored as far as the obligations. Like, for example, when the Prophet ﷺ was asked, well, who deserves my best companionship? The famous hadith that all the sisters know. This is, you know, and the Prophet says, your mother, your mother, your mother, and then your father. So the first, number 1, number 2, number 3 is the mother. Number 4 is the husband. Now here there's something really important that sometimes, of course, the brothers may feel, how come? We're number 4. We're not even number 2. You know. Now, the Prophet ﷺ said that one of you will not complete his iman حتى يكون هواه تبعا لما جئت به, until his desires conform that which I brought forth. Explain that a little bit. When the Prophet said, your mother, your mother, your mother, and then your father. Now, if you're a mother, you feel happy, right? But the challenge is if you're the father. That's what the challenge is, you know. And here, of course, if the person has a perfect iman, he has to like it both ways, whether you're the father or the mother. When Allah says, الرجال قوامون على النساء, oh, the brother feels so proud now. You know, when Allah says that the one in charge is the man. Well, the challenge is when you are the sister. And again, and the concept of equality in Islam is different than it is, you know, with all the other ideologies. Equality does not mean identicality. That two things can be equal without being identical. Like if you think of a $1 bill and 4 quarters. They're equal, but they're not identical. And the same thing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had divided the jobs and the obligations based on the nature. And the nature of the man is different than the nature of the woman. This is a given. I mean, we're not going to exaggerate everything, you know. First of all, I mean, obviously the physical one, but also emotionally, by the way. Emotionally and psychologically, they're different. The perspectives are different. And this is, by the way, this is science. That men and women, on the average, they see things differently. Not to say that one is better than the other, but they complement the other. And based on what they, for example, women see more details than men do. Men don't see details, they don't care. That's why if you look, for example, at a house that is kept by a man, you can see the reflection of that. Women pay special attention to the details. And that gives the woman the better ability to raise the children because they pay attention to the manners of the children. The father doesn't pay attention. Look at a child that is raised by a father without the mother. The manners will not be completely there. But the man is there to see the big picture, to give directions. Sometimes general directions. That's why both perspectives complement each other. And based on the differences, you know, the jobs were given differently, or the assignments, so to speak, the responsibilities were given differently. You know, one thing, for example, is that women tend to remember things far better than men do. You know, if anyone is involved with any marriage counseling, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. That the sister doesn't forget anything. Going back all the way, and the brother may do certain things and some damaging things and he doesn't even think about it. He doesn't even remember it. I said that? I don't even remember saying that. No, so and this, by the way, is a rule. Now you can tell me there are exceptions, yes, but the general rule is that the psychic, shape of the different, of the both genders are not exactly the same. And based on that, there will be different assignments. However, with privileges come more accountability. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, الرجال قوامون على النساء, means there's added responsibility, the day of judgment before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why the more Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you, whether it's a privilege, whether it's an assignment, whether it's a responsibility, means you have more to be accountable for. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said to the wives of the Prophet, if any of you sins, she will have twice the punishment. The wives of the Prophet. Why? Because she's the wife of the Prophet, of course. She has the privilege of being the wife of the Prophet. So this is a chance that, they're the only one that will have. So this is great, but with that comes more accountability. So more is expected from them. So whenever Allah gives, more is expected. But the rule among the human is differences. Within the men, differences. Within the women, differences. And across. And not to say that one is better than the other. Because when it comes to the human nature, Allah says, إِنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. Whether among the men, across humans, across anything else, that it is piety. This is as far as before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As far as account